What happens when standing up for what you believe in turns deadly? Today we're diving into 5 of the most horrific protest deaths that shook the world, and not in a good way. From fiery uprisings to tragic sacrifices, these stories prove that change sometimes comes at a terrifying cost. Buckle up, this isn't your history teacher's lecture. It started off like a regular summer night in Louisville, Kentucky. June 1st, 2020, warm air, good vibes, and the smell of smoky barbecue drifting from Yaya's BBQ Shack, run by none other than David Mcatee, a local legend, a man with a spatula in one hand and a heart full of kindness in the other. He wasn't just serving ribs, he was serving hope in a neighborhood that needed it. David wasn't out protesting that night. He wasn't chanting, holding signs, or clashing with cops. In fact, people say the crowd across the street at Dino's Food Mart wasn't protesting either. It was just a regular neighborhood hangout, a We Survived Monday type of gathering. And David, he was doing what he always did, feeding people, even cops. Yeah, that's right. David fed the police for free. That's how chill and respected he was. But this night, it took a turn no one saw coming. Earlier, Louisville had imposed a 9 p.m. curfew thanks to the nationwide protests after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor's deaths. So the Louisville Metro Police Department and the Kentucky National Guard rolled in to clear the area. Except it wasn't peaceful. According to witnesses, the cops and soldiers boxed people in, creating chaos. People started running. Pepper balls were fired, illegally by the way, directly at people instead of the ground like they were supposed to. One even nearly hit David's niece. That's when things went from tense to tragic. David, beloved, peaceful David, reached for his gun. Surveillance videos later showed he lifted his arm, possibly firing a warning shot. In the chaos, 2 officers and 2 guardsmen unloaded at least 19 bullets in his direction. One shot from a National Guard soldier struck him in the chest. He died right outside his restaurant. He wasn't resisting. He wasn't leading a riot. He was trying to protect his family and his food stand. And that was his final act. The most gut-wrenching part, his body lay there for over 12 hours. The community gathered around, stunned, some crying, others furious. Someone sang "Amazing Grace." It felt less like a crime scene and more like a wake, right on the sidewalk where he used to serve plates piled high with barbecue. Then the truth started unraveling. Turns out the officers' body cams were turned off against department rules. A few days later, the police chief was fired. The footage that did exist showed the pepper balls were fired first, right into the crowd, breaking protocol. And David, lab tests confirmed he was killed by a single bullet from a guardsman. The investigation dragged on. No charges were filed. People were furious. Even David's brother got arrested at a protest demanding justice. Meanwhile, an officer involved had posted a super cringy and honestly disturbing photo on social media, bragging about protesters getting hit with pepper balls. Classy. But here's the thing, David Mcatee wasn't just a victim, he was a hero. He made peace where others stirred chaos. He fed everyone, cops and civilians alike. He was proof that being kind and standing up for your community isn't weakness, it's strength. His death lit a fire under Louisville and beyond, sparking conversations about over-policing, accountability, and how easily Black lives can be erased, even when you're not doing anything wrong. So what can we learn from this? First, justice isn't just about punishment, it's about policy, accountability, and body cams that actually stay on. Second, peaceful communities don't need military-level crackdowns. They need understanding and respect. And finally, if you ever feel small, remember David. He wasn't a politician or a protest leader. He was a guy with a grill who made a big difference. Ashley Babbot, a 35-year-old U.S. Air Force veteran, was fatally shot by a Capitol police officer on January 6, 2021 during the storming of the United States Capitol. Babbot was among the crowd of Donald Trump supporters who breached the Capitol in an attempt to stop Congress from certifying Joe Biden's 2020 presidential victory. Despite repeated warnings, Babbot tried to climb through a shattered window into the speaker's lobby, a restricted area near where lawmakers were being evacuated. She was shot in the left shoulder by Lieutenant Michael Byrd and later died at Washington Hospital Center. Babbot served 12 years in the Air Force, including deployments in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Kuwait, and was part of the DC Air National Guard's Capitol Guardians unit. After leaving the military, she worked security jobs and eventually co-owned a pool servicing company in California with her second husband, Aaron Babbot. Over time, Babbott's political views radicalized. She supported Trump, became a vocal follower of the QAnon conspiracy theory, and was active in the Stop the Steal movement. On social media, particularly Twitter under the handle @CommonAshSense, Babbot heavily engaged with far-right content, often reposting messages promoting conspiracy theories and calls to action. She announced plans to attend the January 6th rally in DC, and on the eve of the event tweeted that the storm is here, referencing a central QAnon belief in a coming reckoning against political elites. On the day of the attack, rioters overran police barriers and stormed the Capitol, causing Congress to halt proceedings and evacuate. At approximately 2:44 p.m., Babbot reached a barricaded door leading to the Speaker's lobby. Lawmakers and staff were still inside, some trapped. As officers withdrew from the barricade, a rioter smashed a window. Babbot, wearing a Trump flag as a cape, attempted to climb through. Lieutenant Byrd, who was on the other side, fired a single shot that struck her. Emergency services rendered aid, but she died soon after. Reports later confirmed Babbot was unarmed, though a folding knife was found in her pocket. The Department of Justice and Capitol Police both cleared Byrd of wrongdoing, determining the shooting was justified and in line with department policy. Byrd later explained that his actions likely saved lives, noting he could not retreat and did not know whether Babbot was armed. Babbot's death quickly became a focal point in political debates. While initially few Republicans criticized the shooting, over time some conservatives began portraying her as a martyr. Trump repeatedly invoked her death, calling it unjustified and describing Byrd as a thug. Fox News hosts and GOP lawmakers like Paul Gosar claimed she had been executed. In contrast, others, including Representative Liz Cheney, defended Byrd's actions and warned against glorifying political violence. The incident was also seized upon by conspiracy theorists, including QAnon supporters, who claim Babbot was still alive or that her death was staged. International figures like Vladimir Putin and Brazil's then Foreign Minister Ernesto Araujo condemned the shooting. In January 2024, Judicial Watch filed a $30 million wrongful death lawsuit on behalf of Babbot's husband, citing government liability. Though it came after the federal statute of limitations, her lawyers argue pandemic-related extensions or state law may apply. In 2025, Trump, then in a second presidential term, said he would consider a settlement. Babbot's mother, Mickey Withoft, became politically active following her daughter's death, attending rallies and supporting January 6 defendants. She has described Babbot as a hero who died defending democracy. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, sunshine, parades, and fireworks. March 26th marked 50 years since Bangladesh broke free from Pakistan, but for many, this golden jubilee felt more like a slap in the face. The guest of honor, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and not everyone was rolling out the red carpet. For protester after protester, it started off like any regular Friday. Prayers at the mosque, a few handmade posters, and the passion to fight for what they believed in. But little did they know, this would be their last stand. So what was all the fuss about? Modi, though seen as a powerful global leader by many, has a very controversial past, especially when it comes to Muslims. Many in Bangladesh viewed him as the butcher of Gujarat for his alleged role in the 2002 riots in India that left hundreds dead. So when he showed up to party in Dhaka, protesters, mainly student groups and the Islamist organization Hefazat-e-Islam, weren't having it. Their message was simple: Modi, you're not welcome here. Their goal: cancel the invitation and send him packing. At first, it was peaceful, chanting, waving banners, even waving shoes in protest, because in South Asia that's major disrespect. But then, chaos. Picture this: protesters at Baitul Mukarram Mosque just finished Friday prayers. The air was tense. Supporters of the ruling Awami League and its student wing were lurking, ready for a brawl. Suddenly fists flew, rubber bullets rained down, and within minutes, a peaceful crowd turned into a war zone. Police joined in with batons and tear gas as protesters screamed and scattered. Over 140 people ended up in the hospital just that day. But the violence didn't stop in Dhaka. The news of the mosque attack reached Hathazari in Chittagong, an area known for its fiery student groups. They took to the streets in rage, but police were waiting. When the protesters neared the police station, things turned ugly fast. Guns were drawn. 4 protesters died on the spot. Bang. Just like that, young lives gone. Meanwhile, in Brahmanbaria, another protester, just a teen trying to make his voice heard, lost his life when Hefazat members stormed a railway station. The town erupted. Highways blocked, police stations attacked, government buildings set on fire. Protesters said they were fed up. The government responded with brute force. Villagers trying to protest were gunned down. A madrasa student was killed when Awami League thugs stormed his school. By the end of it all, at least 14 people were dead. Some say it was more. Hundreds injured. Facebook was shut down. News spread like wildfire anyway. Amnesty International wasn't quiet either. They called it a bloody crackdown and slammed the Bangladeshi government for using excessive force. Protesters weren't armed with rifles. They had signs and sandals. And here's the kicker. These kids weren't criminals. They were students, dreamers, fighters. They believed in something bigger than themselves and stood up, even when it cost them everything. So what can we learn from this? First, the right to protest peacefully matters. Governments need to protect that, not punish it. Second, using force to silence youth never works. It just makes their message louder. And third, heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear sandals and carry signs. These young people were mourned as martyrs by many. Their names may not be in your textbooks, but they're etched into the soul of Bangladesh's struggle for justice. And no matter how brutal the response, the spirit of standing up against injustice lives on. It seemed like just another summer evening in Minneapolis. The sun was dipping low, music played softly from a speaker nearby, and Diona Kenned stood with her fellow protesters on West Lake Street, fighting for something she believed in with every ounce of her soul: justice. But what started as a peaceful protest turned into a night of horror, and for Diona, it would be her last. At 31, Diona wasn't just another face in the crowd. She was a mom to 2 daughters, a caregiver by profession, and a warrior for social justice by passion. On June 13th, 2021, she joined a protest demanding answers and accountability for the police killing of Winston Smith, a black man fatally shot by law enforcement earlier that month. The protests had been ongoing since June 3rd, and Diona had shown up day after day, not for the spotlight, but because she believed people deserved better. And that night, she took it one step further. She used her own car to create a barricade, shielding her fellow demonstrators from traffic. She literally put herself between danger and the people. But then, danger came anyway. Fast, loud, and deadly. Out of nowhere, a speeding SUV plowed through the barricades and into the crowd. The driver, Nicholas Kraus, a 35-year-old with a rap sheet longer than a CVS receipt, had 5 prior DUI convictions. And that night, he was reportedly high, reckless, and according to prosecutors, very aware of what he was doing. Kraus later admitted he intentionally hit the gas. He wanted to clear the barricades. Yeah, like he was in some kind of twisted video game. Except this wasn't Grand Theft Auto, this was real life. And that SUV hit Diona's parked car so hard it became a deadly weapon. She died, and 3 other people were injured. Witnesses said it looked like the car actually accelerated as it approached the demonstration. The aftermath was gut-wrenching. Flowers, candles, and signs flooded the sidewalk where she fell. Her family, friends, and strangers gathered in a sea of tears, chants, and love. The community didn't just lose a protester that night, they lost a hero. Diona had been working as a program manager for a healthcare group, raising her daughters and giving her energy to causes that matter: racial justice, police accountability, and ending gun violence. The man responsible, Kraus, was arrested, charged, and eventually pleaded guilty. He claimed he didn't know a protest was happening, but evidence showed otherwise. Surveillance footage, witness accounts, and even his own statements told a darker story. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison for unintentional second-degree murder and assault with a deadly weapon. Justice, sort of. But no sentence can bring back a mother, a friend, or a fighter like Diona. Her funeral in Rush City, Minnesota drew crowds from across the state. She was remembered not just for how she died, but how she lived, with purpose, kindness, and fearless conviction. Her daughters, now growing up without her, will always know that their mom died doing something brave, something meaningful. So what can we take from this? First, let's never forget that protesting for justice shouldn't be a death sentence. Cities need better protections for peaceful demonstrators. More safety, less risk. And second, let's remember Diona Marie, not just as a name in a headline, but as a woman who believed so fiercely in a better world that she literally stood in the way of harm to protect others. In the end, her life wasn't lost in vain. Her story lit a fire, and her legacy, that lives on in every chant, every march, and every person who dares to stand up and say, "Enough is enough." It seemed like just another crisp, sunny day in Karaj, Iran, the kind where 21-year-old Mcatee Kurami, a national karate champion with dreams as bold as his Olympic ring tattoo, might have been headed to the gym, not to a protest. But this day, meant to honor the 40-day anniversary of Hadis Najafi's death, would end not with a medal, but with a noose. Kurami wasn't some rebel without a cause. He was fighting for basic human rights, part of a massive movement sparked by the tragic death of Mahsa Amini, a young woman arrested for not wearing her hijab properly. Her death ignited protests across Iran, led by the young, the brave, and the done with this oppression crowd. Kurami joined in because when you see your people demanding freedom, staying silent feels like betrayal. But according to Iran's ultra-strict regime, fighting for your rights is apparently corruption on earth. Yes, that's a real charge. Kurami, along with 39-year-old children's coach Sayed Mohammad Hosseini, was accused of killing a besieged militiaman during the protest. Authorities painted them as rioters, killers. Kurami and Hosseini swore they were innocent. The protest in question wasn't some raging battlefield. It was a memorial, a moment of mourning, but things turned dark quickly. Videos showed a lifeless body on a highway, dressed in a besieged uniform. And like a bad crime show without a script, the Iranian government rounded up 16 people, including Kurami. No solid evidence, no fair trial, just vague accusations and brutal consequences. Behind closed courtroom doors, yes, literally closed, because transparency apparently isn't trendy in Tehran, Kurami and Hosseini were tried in less than a week. They weren't allowed their own lawyers. Forced confessions, likely beaten out of them, became the main proof. Kurami's dad begged the authorities in a heartbreaking video to spare his son. "He's a good boy," he said. "He just wanted freedom." Kurami had been passionate about karate since he was 11. He was ranked 4th nationally. This was a kid who dreamed of representing his country, not dying because of it. But instead of sparring in a ring, he was thrown into solitary, reportedly tortured, even threatened with sexual violence in prison. Days before his execution, he started a hunger strike, his final silent protest after being denied the lawyer he trusted. And then, without a final goodbye, they hanged him. On January 7th, 2023, the world lost a young life full of promise. No last call to his family, no justice, just silence. The outcry was global. The UN slammed Iran for shocking executions. Celebrities like Jason Momoa, Kate Blanchett, and Bryan Cranston joined a viral campaign. #Stop executions in Iran. Even the US Special Envoy for Iran tweeted about the horror. People everywhere saw Kurami not as a criminal, but as a symbol. A heartbreaking reminder of what happens when fear runs a government. Mohammad Mcatee Kurami wasn't just a protester. He was a son, an athlete, a dreamer, and while he died in the fight for justice, he didn't die in vain. His name became a rallying cry, his story a warning, and a hope. A hope that with global pressure, with awareness, with voices louder than the silence of oppression, things can change. If there's one takeaway, protesters should never have to die for demanding freedom. Governments must be held accountable, trials must be fair, and the world must never look away. Because today it was Kurami, tomorrow it could be anyone brave enough to speak up.